Welcome back to the Sattler Files, and as we do each week, media. We're talking media with Murray Korff. How are you, Murray?
Very well, thanks, Tom.
Big week in media.
Yes, as always.
Your favourite presenter from the project was the big talking point of the week. You must be happy.
Oh, look,
Gold
I'm
Logie?
Just delighted. As I think my good mate Gary Shannon said, next one it's got to be vegetarians, I think. We've got to have one for vegetarians.
Yeah, I think vegetarians, left-legged lesbians,
all of that sort of stuff.
Land rights for gay whales, all that sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit out of control, isn't it?
Look, so many people really believe that the Logies is all about what the listener or viewer, should I say, votes for. But, I mean, that's just nonsense. If you believe that, I've got a gold Rolex I want to sell you for $5.50 plus GST.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but look,
I'll have three.
Although the Logies did very well in terms of viewers, probably one of the best results they've had for quite some time. And I think the format was a lot slicker, it was a lot more entertaining, forgetting about the actual the reason for them being there, and that is the voting and all that sort of stuff. The presentation was a lot slicker. It had much more entertainment value to it, in my view, and they were rewarded with quite well over 1 million that metropolitan-wise that viewed it. So look, they'd be really pleased with that. Look, as to the winner, I don't, and this is the problem I have. It's becoming a bit too politically correct.
Yeah.
And if you don't like him as a presenter, as I don't, and I've made no secret of that, I don't think he's a good television presenter. That doesn't say anything about his intellect, his education, or anything like that. No. I just don't like him as a presenter. But now, and on Facebook, I've been labelled as racist. I've been labelled as an Islamophobe and all that sort of stuff, when the reality is it's got nothing to do with that. It's about the fact of whether I think he does well on television and is a comfortable television presenter.
If he was a blonde, blue-eyed woman,
yes,
and presented the same, you'd probably have the same opinion.
Well, absolutely, I would. There's no question about it. I don't. And here's my critique of him, and in some detail. To me, he comes across as not comfortable in the role. He comes across to me as somebody who would like to be in a more serious sort of analytical program, and sometimes he's a little bit out of his depth when it comes to the humour side of things, but he also tends to, because he wants to be in a more serious role, a more analytical role, he tends to come across to me as being a bit of a preacher.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, I think quite often you see him being very condescending in that regard.
Yeah.
And because he is trying to over-intellectualise everything, I think.
That would be my view, but because I have the view, and I don't agree with all of the lefties that are voting for him, I'm also all of a sudden a racist, and so you don't appear to be able to have an opinion about somebody of different ethnicity.
If you find, what's your thoughts on Dave Hughes, who was on the program for quite some time now, still bobs up on the Footy Show and doing Drive on 96,
and he was the host of the Logies as well.
Yep.
He started off with the Logies. Look, Dave Hughes is a totally different thing. I mean, he's a knockabout sort of a guy. The thing that constrained him on the Logies was he's not allowed to swear. He's not allowed to say the F word, which Julia Morris appeared to have no problem with saying at all. So, look, I think he's okay. But once again, he's there as comedy relief. Yeah. So he does what he does, and comedy's once again something of a personal taste as well. Isn't some things that are funny to some people just simply fall flat with others.
I'm just, the whole Logie concept, I suppose, these days. I mean, the industry needs to, reward its own and acknowledge performances and stuff, and that's great. But, I didn't watch 30 seconds of it, so I can't comment on how slick it was or wasn't, because I don't know, I was doing my nails or something, I think. And really had no interest in watching it. But, I'm a bit the same. I don't find his style of presentation particularly conducive with what I like. And I think the project concept is good.
I do too.
I just don't think they've got the mix right.
I don't think they have, and they don't. They say their positioning statement is news presented differently, but it's not really. because when you start to get serious about it, then it's not presented differently. It's presented the same as every other news outlet is presenting it.
Well, I mean, Carrie Bickmore doing that thing where, they'll banter, and all of a sudden, turns to the camera with the serious news headlines of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yes, exactly.
That's every news bulletin.
That's right. You may just as well be watching Channel 7 or Channel 9. So, look, I've said my piece about him. I do admire his intellect. I think he's an extremely thoughtful person. But I thought, and if you didn't see it, then you wouldn't realise that his acceptance speech really underlined and had political undertones about it. And I thought that was not in the spirit of the Logies. It had to be, and his line was, "Yes, this is really happening. Do not adjust your sets." Well, I'm sorry, but that to me says it all. And he lost me there once again, because all it was saying, "Here, I'm different. I'm tinted, and I've won a Logie. So get over it."
Yeah.
Well, good on you, Waleed. Great spirit in which it was given. His speech in other areas was, I thought, very good. He paid great tribute to his wife and all that sort of stuff. And beyond that, but it really had that political undertone to it, and I didn't like it.
As you would expect, because I mean, he has turned into a bit of a polarising character.
He does, and look, that is what makes him successful, because if you don't polarise an audience, you're not really doing anything. And that's one thing I always used to say about Gary Shannon. He was wildly popular, but gee, there were some people that disliked him intensely. But he polarised the audience.
Mainly people that went drinking with him, because he never
right.
bought.
That's right. He wouldn't shout if a shark bit him. And I mean, Howard Sattler is the same. I mean, he's very polarising. People either love him for what his views are, or they really disagree with him quite violently. Yeah. So Waleed is going down that road, and there will be people that love him. The intellectual lefties will think he's just wonderful. But he's won a Logie, so can't take that away from him.
Wow, so at least his front door will be open and stay up and not slam in the wind. That's great.
That's it.
Yes. Other television news.
Channel 7. Here's the thing. Channel 7 have followed on with what the same thing as 9 and 10 have done, and that is they're going to simulcast their main channel in high definition.
Yes, I saw a post, rather tongue-in-cheek, sort of sarcastic post from you last night.
Yes. Well, you know me, I'm not normally like that.
No.
Look, we're now going to see the football in high definition. And
we'll also see Susanna and Rick in high def. That'd be pretty cool.
That's right.
Fat Cat going to bed.
That's right. All in high definition.
Yeah.
And look, it's about time. People, it's just disgraceful that they have 7 Mate as their high definition channel, and sometimes we get the football on there. And I don't understand how they do that or what.
I think it's mainly a scheduling thing. Basically, they don't want to move the news. So if it's something that goes across the news or one of their main programs, they put it on 7 Mate.
Okay.
They very rarely, just as an observer, I don't know what the policy is, but if you look at Friday night, generally, it's later, so therefore that's okay.
Yeah.
It tends to be more about the news than anything else. Yeah. And if it's Eagles or Dockers and it's an afternoon game that leads up to a 6 o'clock finish, basically, and then leads into the news on the weekend, they'll do that. But otherwise, it'll be on 7 Mate.
But they will actually delay it. This is the thing that's so irritating. They'll delay it so that they can time it up to the news. And that's not in the, we want to watch the damn thing live. It really just is so irritating when they do that. But, who knows?
Well, the policy on the local games, I guess, has always been that unless it's a sellout, it won't be live.
Yeah. But those of us that have Foxtel, we can watch it live.
Yeah.
So
I think that's part of the arrangement with Foxtel, with the thing there that they can't show a non-sold-out game live on free-to-air because that then diminishes the value of Foxtel.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's true. But anyway, it's a step in the right direction, and I'm really pleased that they've done it. It hasn't taken them too long to follow 9 and then 10 and now 7.
Yes.
Now, all we have to do now is get the ABC to drop their high-definition 24-hour news service and put in the ABC main channel, ABC One.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Maybe they will now that all the commercials have done it. Because, look, the ABC have got programs that are really quite stunning, would be quite stunning in high definition, and yet we have to put up with this ridiculous 24-hour news service in high definition when most of the material is off iPhones and things like that really don't qualify for high definition.
Here's footage of a car crash off someone's iPhone.
That's right. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
But it stems back to the time when not everybody had high definition and it was mandated by the government that you must not do that. You must have everything in standard definition on your main channels. Well, that restriction has now been lifted.
Sure.
Okay, in other television, My Kitchen Rules continues to be, not My Kitchen Rules, The Voice, continues to be an absolute juggernaut.
Wow.
1.2... just over 1.2 million last night, 1.4 on Monday night.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that format, I actually think that the overall concept, you would think it's tiring, but it seems to be hanging in there.
Look, it's in great contrast to X Factor and Australia's Got Talent that really were very mediocre and didn't work quite well at all for them. And I can't help but think the concept of the turning chairs is really what does it that way. I mean, it's got great production values and all of that other stuff, but they all do.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only difference. And could it be that some of the judges are better?
Maybe we underestimate the value of Delta Goodrem.
Maybe we do. I think that there are lots
we can tend to be a bit dismissive at times.
Of her?
Yeah.
Look, I think you can. And look, she is really a true artist. I mean, and a lot of people dismiss her and they don't like her because she's a bit saccharine sweet, and all of that sort of stuff. But you can't take away from the fact that she is a genuine artist. The
mix of judges is sort of interesting, really. The Madden Brothers thing is a bit weird, and well, Jessie J is just weird, full stop, and Ronan Keating is, well, poor man's Robbie Williams, I guess. And
he is,
and. It's an interesting mix of judges in that sense, and the concept's a little bit different, I suppose.
I think the turning chairs thing is a bit different, and they've gone to a lot of trouble this year to find people with a story. Everybody's got a story.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, isn't it? Though, but most of these shows really revolve around the emotion, not about the talent, not about the performance.
In many ways, that's quite right. That's quite right. But it's I guess that it because it's got a bit of emotion about it, pulls on the heartstrings. It's got quite a good
well, it's a path we've been going down for a while, isn't it? I mean, you go back to Australian Idol a few years back.
That's true.
And her name escapes me because she disappears off the face of the earth just after she won it.
Carice Eden? No,
the young girl that won it, the young Aboriginal girl that won it.
Oh, yes.
After, like, Guy Sebastian and all that sort of stuff.
That's right.
And even that, there was a story there. But then she had the story, but, couldn't cope with the fame and all the rest of it. And it sort of fell in a heap.
Yeah.
But even then, it was all focused on, how tough it was, her upbringing and how she got to this point. And a physical appearance, I guess, in that sense, not typical, rock star stuff.
Yeah.
Everything else. So, I mean, those shows are a bit like, I suppose, to a degree, most of the cooking shows and renovation shows are more about the story than they are about cooking or renovation.
That's right.
These singing programs have very little to do with singing.
Yes.
As long as you can hit the notes and do the vocal gymnastics, you're in. But
that's right.
But if you've got a great story to tell that, you had your head chopped off when you were 7 and it was reattached the wrong way and you still can sing, then you're in,
But I think the other thing about The Voice is it is what it is in the sense that it is about the voice. That's the whole concept of it. Things like Australia's Got Talent isn't solely music.
No.
It's all sorts of other things. And I'm not sure that we're into watching circus acts, to be honest.
Juggling cats, I mean, that's just not fun anymore,
Juggling cats. You're quite right. Look, before we move on to wireless, which is my favourite, it looks like we're going to lose the hard copies of The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, I think it is.
Yeah.
Because it's costing too much to print and they're going to take them online only.
One thinks that that's inevitable, that was going to happen. It's a sad day, and
Yeah.
I mean, Despine and myself and numerous other people spent days at newspapers. So anyone that's worked in a newspaper, to see newspapers actually disappear is quite sad, because it's been part of multiple generations.
It has.
But the sad reality is that they're just not relevant anymore.
Doesn't seem to be, does it? Because people get their information from all different sources now, not confined to newspapers as it pretty much used to be. Newspapers and radio really were your news source. And now you can get it from just about anywhere online, can't you? And
instantly. I mean, this thing about waiting till tomorrow morning's paper or Sunday's paper, by then it's old news. It's, the Sunday Times, for instance, for years now, has become pretty much irrelevant as a news source. It's just, by Sunday, it's all done and dusted.
Yeah.
And unless they're talking about an event that happened on Saturday night, they're just not relevant. And even if it had happened Saturday night, the news cycle being the way it is, with News 24 and with WA Today and all the online sites, and.
Yes.
By Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, when you go and go for a walk down the shop, it's, so what?
You know everything that's in there, pretty much.
Yeah.
And of course, there's also the people with iPhones who put up clips on YouTube or on social media.
Yeah.
And you haven't got the full story, but you at least know about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of stories where you don't really get past the headlines. You're aware of the fact that there's been an incident here or an accident there or a scandal there or whatever it is.
Yep.
Aside from that, you really don't care enough to actually read the whole article.
Well, you don't, and it's all about information overload. There are so many things that we see and take in every single day. You can't get down to the nitty-gritty of it unless that happens to be a particular area of interest to yourself.
Which, realistically, that's how we all function anyway.
Of course it is.
It's if it's not particularly pertinent to us, we don't care.
No.
If it's atrocities being carried out in another country that we don't intend travelling to, so what? But if it's Donald Trump, and we want to go to the States, then that's another story.
That's right.
The main atrocity is still his hair, but
it certainly is.
It's
God.
But it's one of those things. I think you're right. The whole way of disseminating information now has changed so much that newspapers just can't keep up.
No, they can't keep up. They do, however, cover issues in a lot of depth that perhaps you don't get on television and you don't get on radio.
No, but you do get online, and everyone's online now. So you could even argue that the top of the hour news bulletins on radio is of limited relevance.
Well, it is.
And certainly the 6 o'clock bulletin, as is demonstrated by the network's tendency to have multiple, news bulletins. You've got news at 5, news at 6, news bulletin at 7:30, et cetera, et cetera. None of the commercial stations are just running a bulletin now. There's 5 or 6 bulletins a day.
Indeed.
Which goes to this fact that people want their information, they want it now, and, move on.
Well, basically, if you're on Facebook, several times a day, as most people are, you probably pretty much know every story that's going to be on the 7 News, don't you?
Yeah.
So, look, it really is just a turning point, I think.
We're always still sitting back and eagerly awaiting the next weight loss story on Today Tonight, or the next scandal of a hidden camera bricklayer who doesn't put all the bricks in the wall, or something like that. But news-wise, I just think it's changed so much, and it is a sad day. But there's
a certain inevitability about it. And
I think so.
The way things go.
Very much so. Now, radio. I know you got lots about radio today.
You've got a bit about radio. The 6IX duo, one half has departed.
Well, I think it's the artist formerly known as the 6IX duo.
That's right. I think we covered on an earlier segment that Stuart Endersby, who was their program director, has gone to sell real estate.
Yes, down in Fremantle, I believe.
At Harcourt,
yes.
Yeah. And has left with Tim Gossage doing Breakfast as a solo act. Now, I think we talked about this some time ago before this even went to air. this particular duo went to air, that would be largely football on a music station, and the whole message would get mixed and so on. Well, now Tim Gossage, and let's say up front that I have no particular criticism of him. I think he's a great sportscaster, and he looks good on television and all that sort of stuff. Horses for courses. But as a solo breakfast announcer, compare and contrast him with John Burgess. Now, I mean, there isn't one.
I mean, Tim doing breakfast solo on 6PR, for instance, would have some merit. Although, in saying that, there's criticisms of Baz because of the sport content. I mean, it's, they've got a sports program. They have lots of sports content as such.
They do.
So, therefore, someone talking about footy all morning, as he is prone to, because that's his world.
Yes. Well, it is, and he knows that best.
Yeah.
And he's very knowledgeable about the subject and that. But look, we're talking about breakfast on a music station, an oldies station, basically.
Yeah.
And he's not going to fit. He won't last.
No.
And I think part of the problem that 6IX have got at the moment is that they are cutting costs because they did abysmally in the last survey. They went down around 3% and a bit, I think.
Yeah, 3.2, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously they've just cut the cost of their breakfast program in half by getting rid of somebody, and even that is a bit controversial because on Maddie's Facebook page she says that she resigned because of other commitments and so on, but on her Twitter feed she was pushed. So
it's hard to believe that after only a few weeks.
Well, it's what did they go to air in January? I think it was.
I think it might have been Feb, actually, by the time it went to air.
Yeah, that's true. They talked about it a lot in January, wasn't it? Because that was out of ratings.
Yes.
So they put them on just before the start of the ratings period. So, yeah, probably only February. You're probably right.
So 3 months, basically. I mean, three months to go because of other commitments when,
You'd signed up only 3 months ago.
You're doing radio, breakfast radio. Bit hard to swallow that one. It'd be easier to swallow the bacon and eggs, I think, than that story.
Yeah,
but as you said on Twitter, it says that she was pushed.
So look, 6IX are in all sorts of trouble, and I just don't know what the next move would be for them and what they can do with it.
You would think that, I mean, they obviously need to get back to a music format, like a music base, if you like, where they've got an announcer that's got some spunk about him, that's got a bit of vibe about him, knows his music, loves his music, and is playing his music and is engaging. Not necessarily the funniest bloke on the planet, because don't need to be.
No.
I reckon that a solo breakfast, Ian Cameron is living testimony to the fact that a solo breakfast can work.
Absolutely.
And particularly in an oldies music format, people don't want people trying to be funny for 3 hours.
No, they don't.
At that hour of the morning.
No.
And that's proven. You only have to look at 96's figures to reinforce that.
Absolutely.
I mean, 96 would be, better placed or better served by actually going to, bringing back someone like a Darren Tamello and going do breakfast.
That's right, on your own.
Yeah.
And just with your music knowledge and your ability to know what the audience wants.
And just communicate.
Yeah.
Just be there and be back to the days where radio announcers were mates.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's harking back to the old days, and sometimes I'm not a fan of doing that terribly, but sometimes, things work in cycles. And I think this idea of forced comedy, which most of it is, when you're trying to get people together who aren't particularly funny in many senses and don't have the chemistry and don't have the material, don't have the writers, and really the listeners aren't that interested.
No, they're not. And morning crews and breakfast crews and zoos and all that sort of stuff, I mean, they have been done for the last 20 years. It's really time, I think, to have another look at that. And with great respect to Tim, and I mean that quite sincerely, I don't think he's the right person to actually run a solo breakfast program on a music station.
No.
So, look, poor old 6IX, they've obviously running short of funds as well. I mean, they're not rating that well. But that said, and moving on to the next little bit, radio is doing very well in Australia at the moment. They've had quite an increase in the revenue that they're drawing nationally. Now, obviously, there's winners and losers out of that. But radio is a long way from being dead. If you look at the the average increase, I think, nationally was 8%.
In saying that, my view of, for what it's worth, I think digital is an absolute white elephant.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's done. The government hasn't. I don't think they've rolled it out right.
No, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
And I think that Chemist Warehouse and Coles having their own digital stations now, having taken over spectrum from the respective networks, DMG or Nova, etc., is testimony to the fact that, I mean, you only have to look at Triple M Rock. Doesn't have ads.
No.
So therefore, it can't be generating revenue.
No. Well,
so the only thing, like for instance, Nova have subleased what was Coffee, which was a good platform. They've just subleased that to Coles and said, here, pay us X amount of dollars a year and it's your station. Now, as Coles, it's rating better than it was as Coffee.
That's right.
Which is frightening in itself.
Yeah, because it's got ads in it too.
Well, it's got ads, but it's also, it's reasonably well programmed and everything else. But the only revenue opportunity that I see for digital radio is exactly that, is selling off the stations. Because people don't want the same song announcer. I mean, well, there's another thing. Coles Radio is rating with no announcers. So what does that say about listening habits? It says we don't need announcers. So therefore, if you play a song and play a bunch of ads and play a song and play a bunch of ads and the songs are okay, you'll get listeners. Isn't that a scary proposition?
Very.
If you're a radio announcer, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that's the only revenue model that seems to be generating any money for anyone in digital space. The community stations, I've spoken to 2 in the past week, and they're both of the opinion that digital will never happen now for community stations with the withdrawal of the funding by the federal government in the budget. They simply can't afford it. And so they need to be using commercial transmission sites. They can't afford it. They needed the government to subsidise it. The government said no. So both the major stations in Perth that I spoke to in the past week have both gone. It's dead. It's gone. So there's no community digital. The commercial stations, none of them have any direction or any income unless they sublease the station to Coles or Chemist Warehouse. That paints a very bleak picture to me.
It certainly does, and that's if what you say actually turns out to be the case, I'd be very sad about that. But I agree with what you say in terms of the way that it's been rolled out. There should have been much more done in the same vein as they did with television, and that is to cease analogue and you had to get digital. Now, that's kind of a forced changeover, but that's good in so many ways because it makes people go to the new platform. It gets rid of some older technology, and in my view, we should be abandoning the AM band altogether.
It's a waste of space. But you look at the sheer numbers. I mean, the penetration claimed on digital units is 20%. Smartphones is 89%. Straight away, you're talking like a massive imbalance.
Yes.
So the online technology is already there. The fact is I can plug my iPhone into a cradle in my car with Bluetooth. I can have it through my stereo. So therefore, having digital on my radio in my new car is of no relevance anyway.
No.
Doesn't matter.
No.
I can still listen to my phone, which means I can listen online.
Yeah.
So, okay, the quality's not the same. So what?
A lot of people wouldn't even notice, to be honest.
No.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even the quality difference between FM and digital is marginal. To an untrained ear, you'd hardly pick it.
Not much. But one of the things they haven't done a lot of, and I don't know whether this is to do with legislation or whether it's to do with the stations, but nobody's exploiting all of the capabilities of digital at all.
And that's because of the fact that would take more resources and more money, and they got no income. So why would you spend money on something that actually doesn't have a revenue model?
Yeah.
Which is effectively what most of them are.
And the other thing is the band in which digital is a bit like UHF television. It really does require proper antennas and works well in cars, but not so much on portables. Yeah. So, there are some issues with it that maybe I agree with you when you say that the government rollout of digital has had lots of flaws in it and does still have lots of flaws in it. So,
Well, I mean, Howard just pointed out a very good point, and it's a bit like sort of Betamax recorders, I suppose, back in those days with, those sorts of disasters, but AM stereo years ago. I mean, what a disaster that was.
Well, once again, it was because it wasn't rolled out properly. That was the first thing. None of us were singing from the same prayer book at all. And there was no cohesion. But when you look at television, what they did, it was cohesive. There was a plan. It was all rolled out and everybody knew what they were doing. But this is just another way of getting your signal out there, and which people are not really taking up.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens now with the community digital spectrum, because that clearly has become is going to become available.
Yes.
Now, the commercial operators won't particularly be queuing up to buy the spectrum.
I wouldn't think so.
Because they're not making any money now, and they don't think they're going to make any money now. So there's this spectrum sitting there. What are they going to do with it? The community station's saying we can't afford it. The government's saying we're not going to fund it. So there's all these stations now across Australia that won't be able to continue.
Well, they won't be able to continue on digital. They'll continue on FM or AM, depending on where they are.
But I mean, I guess, but equally without that diversity, I mean, the diversity is a double-edged sword in itself. Having that fragmentation of so many channels, obviously that means the core stations are going to suffer because, as digital TV has been the same, I mean, you're not going to get the same advertisers spending the same sort of money on 7, 7.2 and 7.8.
No.
So therefore, if you've got 100, if you've got 100 digital stations floating around, it's going to impact on the FM stations for starters to a lesser, to a small degree, but also they haven't got the listeners to be able to attract substantial amounts of revenue. So it's a real catch-22, and I just can't see how they're going to get out of this dilemma, because ultimately this forum we're sitting on right now, it's online. Everyone's got access to it. It doesn't cost them anything.
Yep.
It sounds okay.
Yep.
Tick, 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 tick,
well,
tick, tick.
I mean, we've talked about this before. Podcasting and webcasting is actually the future.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. So,
and I reckon it's gonna leave digital just in no man's land. I just can't see how the government's going to get the take up, because even if they did say that AM and FM is closed at the end of next year, so pluck that out of the air, and so you have to go digital. Most people have either gone net radio, Spotify, iTunes,
Pandora,
whatever it is anyway. So they're not going to care. So it's not going to have the same urgency that television had when they said we're going to switch off the analog thing. If you haven't got your set-top box or your upgraded television, you won't have any television. You can't imagine a household going, oh, well, it doesn't matter.
No.
But I can imagine lots of households going, oh, we're not going to buy a bloody digital radio.
Quite right, yeah. So
I can get everything I want on my phone.
And yet you would have to think that given that revenue is on the rise for radio nationally...
And you wonder how that's happening.
Well, they must be getting a result. They must be, because the way that money is at the moment, unless you're getting a result for your advertising, you're not going to go back. So they must be getting a result. They just must be. So, look, other than that, they've got super salesmen. That's what I can say.
Well, they do have a tendency for that. They employ well.
They do.
I guess it's the FM stations. It certainly won't be revenue. Although in saying that, you wonder if commercial radio revenue, as an example, if commercial radio revenue would include the lease figures from Coles for their radio station, as an example.
Well, that probably...
Which is a big chunk of money.
Yep.
I've heard that it's 7 figures to lease it for the year, or and probably a 5-year deal or whatever it may be. I mean, that's a lot of revenue to throw into the pot.
It is.
Which might actually be covering up a bit of a, papering over a crack.
Could be, but although back then when we were reporting revenues to the industry body, we were only allowed to have 2 categories, that is agency revenue and direct revenue. That was it.
Well, you could argue that revenue from a digital station as part of your network
Interesting point, Tom.
Would be direct revenue, or if it's booked through an agency, I don't know. But whatever the deal is, I mean, if Coles is, let's say, for argument's sake, they're paying $1 million a year to Nova, that's $1 million a year revenue direct, which you could argue is radio revenue.
Yep, I guess you could.
I mean, that has a significant impact on the overall figures if you just throw an extra $1 million in there for the sake of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I could see that radio is, it must be doing something right, but, wow, there's a whole bunch of challenges.
More than one. No question.
Any other radio news?
No, look, I think we've got another survey out in the next couple of weeks, which we'll look forward to. But basically, the radio industry is just honking along at the moment, and not too many changes. Hopefully,
and the newspaper industry, well, that's tough.
That's gone and dead and buried. Just
yes.
about.
If you've got a copy of today's West, I would suggest you frame it
because it may not be here tomorrow.
Who knows? No, I think the West will probably survive for a while, but yeah, there's probably some question marks over the longevity of the actual paper version as we know it.
Indeed.
Excellent, Murray Korff, always interesting.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Talking media, and we'll have more coming up very shortly on the Sattler Files.
This is the Sattler Files.